We don't even know who is building OpenAI ChatGPT. All we know is this person called Sam Altman, who's actually a marketing guy. Do you think that the STEM education in India needs to fundamentally change?
I wish I had a Altman kind of an alter ego who can do all that work. But, I'm not. So we have the talent. What we need is a drive.
Absolutely. I think media is, and I think being part of the fraternity, I can absolutely say there's so much attention to given to the person who is a fundraiser or the entrepreneur or the CEO. We don't even want to talk to the chief product officer or the engineers who are building the product.
We see industry is maturing, but at where it is currently, it is dominated by people who have a financial interest.
The fondest memory from your IIT Bombay days.
IIT Bombay days fondest memory is going to sound very strange. I spent all my time in
Hello and a very warm welcome to everyone. I am Shrija Agrawal and with me is a very special guest today. This is our first episode for Maker FM, which is a part of a special podcast series that we are doing with Maker Bhavan Foundation. With me in the studio today is Hemant Kanakia, who is the CEO and the founder of Maker Bhavan Foundation. Before we get on to understanding what the foundation does, here is a man who actually is on a mission. He is somebody who graduated from IIT Bombay and genuinely interested in giving back to the country, which is so beloved for him. He actually went to Stanford, and when he was doing his PhD there, that is where the moment of revelation happened, how engineering is taught in India. Perhaps that is not necessarily the best way to teach engineering. That combined with his urge to really modify and change the entire curriculum of the engineering education in India, sort of went and fueled the desire in him to found Maker Bhavan Foundation with a genuine mission how we can make the learning of engineering more experiential in nature. Hemant is somebody who also has various patents to his name. He's an active angel investor. He's a retired GP at a US venture firm. So he is somebody who has really seen the entire journey of entrepreneurship from zero to founding a company to selling it and now giving back to a country which he genuinely believes in. Hemant, thank you. It's my sheer pleasure and privilege to have you for what is the first episode of Maker FM. We began with this entire idea of how you are genuinely invested in the idea of giving back to this country. What really happened at Stanford, where you thought that there was a missing gap in STEM education in India?
I think overall I would say that the education I received in IIT as well as in Stanford changed my life. I came from a family of real estate developers, and my father always said, "Beta, you would have made a lot more money if you stuck with me," which is actually not true. But I think I got good education in IIT, but when I went to Stanford and I did my PhD in electrical engineering there, I realized that there is a big difference in the way things are being taught there versus the things were being taught in IIT. Just to sum it up in a very short sentences, the basic difference that we have is that our education is a lot more rote learning. You sit in front of a blackboard and a lecture is given to you, and there is not real interactive aspect of it. And so we are missing out on things, but that's the main reason we want to make a change.
Thanks for that, Hemant. I mean, this entire idea that we are very obsessed with rote learning was an idea which actually came in mainstream cinema also, in the form of a cult film like Three Idiots, where you had these three boys coming out of IIT, went on to pursue their dreams over just having a course coming from IIT. But do you think that the STEM education in India needs to fundamentally change? And what is it that you saw in other parts of the world as best practices which you want to imbibe here?
Let's first look at what is the current situation in our engineering education. and which is also true for science education as well. A lot of us work very hard for 2 years in coaching classes or otherwise. By the time you make it to an engineering college like an IIT, you are burnt out. All you are looking forward to is getting out of the 4 years and landing a good job. So a lot of the faculty members actually complain that the students don't even come to the classes anymore. And part of the reason that happens is because the engineering education, the way it is taught right now, is not interesting, nor is it relevant to what they will be doing when they get out. And I think we also don't teach them to be innovative, which also something that comes in handy if you are going to progress in your career. And those are the things that at the Bhavan Foundation we are trying to change, taking lessons from the best practices around the world and to how you actually inculcate those things.
So, Hemant, this entire idea about maker spaces, what really is it? And when you talk to IITs, for instance, in this country, they really brandish themselves as institutions where so many entrepreneurs have come out. So, how did they take when you made this comment that engineering has to fundamentally change the education? Were there takers to you? Were there people who happily accepted this comment of yours? Was there a backlash from people? Give us some on the ground sense.
At a very high level, they agree with the concepts. They don't quite understand how they implement them in their framework. I think the National Education Policy of 2020 has said that we shall have an experiential learning. What does it translate that to an actual practice or in the curriculum is not very clear or nor actually been prescribed by the government. And so in a sense, it is more about actually showing examples on how to do it. For instance, if I were to go and tell the people that you are teaching a fluid dynamics course and you are teaching them something called a Navier-Stokes equations, which is all about how the viscous fluid the flow operates. Those equations are useful for designing cars which are aerodynamic. They are useful for predicting weather modeling, ocean currents, all kinds of things. But if you just teach them as differential equations to be solved and some examples to be given, the students are not interested. They don't actually see a real application of it. Similarly, in electromagnetics, they tell them or how to build various types of motors. You can cover the theory, but that doesn't really stick with the people. And the problem with all of this is that all those equations and all that theory is now easily available by just going a Google or a Chat GPT, and you don't really need a professor to tell you what those things are. Instead, if you actually had, say, a course which is basically about building a project, which is saying build a magnetic levitation car, it would incorporate many of these things. Or if you tell them that you're going to build a aerodynamic drone, and that will teach them about the fluid dynamics and all. So I think seeing a real life examples and actually building those kind of systems would engage the students more. They will see the real applications of engineering theory to the real world. And that is the practice followed in the top universities abroad. And that's why they don't ever complain about the students not engaged or not being in the classes. The students want to be there. So that's
so you are saying that tinkering is needed to infuse joy, curiosity, and engagement in the way engineering is taught. And when you said about maker spaces, so maker spaces are those spaces which basically infuse the enthusiasm in students, from students to makers. That's where the transition happens, from projects to products. And is that what the maker spaces does?
Yeah, I think Makerspace also addresses the other shortcomings we have in our system. The faculty members or the professors in general don't give a lot of leeway to the students to engage their creativity. For instance, they tell you that here is a hovercraft you have to build. They don't really give a students and saying, okay, what idea do you have? Why don't you build that? So that sort of engages the creativity, which is what the maker spaces that we design and make it available at universities is about. The students can walk in with an idea in their head and build a product or build a prototype which could lead to a product. They are not told that this is what you shall make. It is their own ideas. Sometimes it is very simple, that all that they are trying to do is design an entertainment light and sound show for their hostel function. Or sometimes they actually design something much more complex. So it is engaging the students in a way that they have to be creative. The other thing that distinguishes makerspaces is that they are actually common to all different disciplines. Our engineering education is very siloed. People either learn electrical engineering or they learn chemical engineering or the mechanical engineering. Whereas in a makerspace, people come from a variety of different disciplines and build a product or a prototype that combines many of those elements. And so that's breaking the silos, which is also again what happens in the real world in engineering projects. And the third thing that it allows is that our education system is very individually tasting people. We don't encourage people to work in the teams. Because they don't know how to evaluate the students who are working in a team and how to give them grades. So we make them do individual projects. Whereas the makerspace is a place where you can work in small teams, large teams, you can go and build things which will go for international competition and things like that. So that's what is different about makerspaces.
So basically it's the hard skills plus the combination of softer skills which are needed to succeed, right? But tell me one thing, Hemant, of what all you told me in terms of products or creating a prototype, coming up with an idea, how is that different from, say, an incubation cell of an IIT? How is a makerspace different from that?
I think makerspace should be looked upon as actually a place where people develop a aptitude for building things, or a place where they let their creativity run amok. It is not necessary that the people who actually have that kind of an education will become an entrepreneur. Becoming an entrepreneur requires more things. You have to learn about the business, you have to learn about marketing, and that's a next step if you want to actually build a product. But whatever you learn in makerspaces is useful if you have to go and work in some engineering firm. If you are to go and work in a research lab. So that is actually what is our aim. It's a formative steps that can lead to a startup. And in fact, it has led to startups to a lot of places. But that's not what we are all about.
So what is the intent or the desired outcome from Maker Bhavan Foundation? How would you measure the success or the impact of this foundation? Are there parameters on which you evaluate what work you have done and what really is the outcome of it?
Yeah, let me give an example that would actually illustrate what is the impact that it has on students. I just recently met a person who had been one of the earliest managers of the student manager of the makerspace in IIT Bombay. He told me that he came from a very small community in Rajasthan, what we call a kumbar kind of a thing, making potteries. And he had gotten an job offer from Goldman Sachs to become an investment banker. Instead, he chose to say, no, I really like the engineering that I learned in Makerspace. And he went to abroad to do the automotive engineering. He worked at NTT, he worked at Bosch in Germany. And then ultimately, after 5-6 years, he said, I'm going to start my own company.
Wow.
And so that is the kind of a thing we are saying. I mean, it's a lot of students basically aspire to go into consulting jobs or or become an investment bankers or actually go to MBA and all. Almost all of them want to be in IT, which is mostly a coding job. Whereas this gives them a chance to be more creative.
This is your genuine passion.
They get a passion for engineering.
This is your
just as you can see from my description that, I would love to have students build a magnetic levitation train. What does it involve, right? So those are the kind of things that not everybody would do that, but we at least facilitate a small section of them to do that.
So this is your genuine passion for engineering talking here.
Yeah.
I mean, you're genuinely invested into engineering. And I think you basically want to create a nation where there are people who really are product builders, people who really can make products. Because I must also tell you, Hemant, that the common grouse for a lot of entrepreneurs in this country really is that you don't have people who can create great products. The talent is not necessarily there. It's exactly what you said, people who can actually make things. We kind of look to the US always for innovation.
But that is where the challenge is, right? In a sense, we have entrepreneurs who have done quite well in their life. They have actually mostly taken the models of business that work abroad, copied them, and make them work here. I mean, many examples, like a Zomato is an example of it. Ola is an example of it. Those are not very innovative in their own sense of it. Whereas when I started a company, and I after my PhD, I started a company, I looked at the problem and said, what is the current problem in the networking equipment? And I built a router which was an order of magnitude cheaper, an order of magnitude faster than the existing system. That required an engineering innovation. We don't do those kind of innovative stuff, and not having done that, our companies have a harder time actually being world class. Yeah, and so if the need for us is to actually have the innovative engineers come out of our education systems, and they would either become a part of a workforce or they would become entrepreneurs which will do a deep tech startups.
So do you think that on this entire topic of innovation, especially talking from the Indian context, there's this entire comment sort of often made that perhaps the level of innovation has come down? There was in fact a very interesting reference made in this book on Elon Musk, which Ashley Vance wrote, and he spoke about the Hubner's Research of Innovation Index, where he said that perhaps the best innovation has already happened by way of aeroplanes or telephones. I mean, that was a real innovation. And now in the name of innovation, we are getting Twitter, a dining app. So you think that the entire acceptability of innovation has kind of decreased?
I mean, look, I think those are the kind of comments made by the people who have never invented anything.
Okay.
So I don't pay too much attention to them. But if you just look at what has happened in the last, say, 5 years, right? We had on a gene editing side a new innovation called CRISPR-9, which has entirely changed how you can do the gene editing, and that has made a difference in terms of what kind of medicines you can build. It's not something that is it is a part of a research. Similarly, the vaccines that came out that that were in response of the COVID things is a part of a research that was actually an innovative stuff, mRNA stuff. So if you look at a quantum computing, which is the current rage, that is also going to be a research. If you look at an AI that we talk about, right? It's not just another social media. It's not just another chatbot. AI is going to revolutionize our world. And although we are a nation with a lot of software engineers, we haven't contributed to any of those things. We haven't actually gotten, a Chinese engineers, which are not all that known to be a software experts, came up with a much better innovation in AI very recently. And they are catching up with the US very fast.
Yeah, in the entire kerfuffle on DeepSeek versus OpenAI is for everyone to see.
Yeah, but where are we? Right.
So what does it require, Hemant, for this country to really produce world-class engineers? And if you think we are on the same way as we are, will we ever get there?
I think we have talent. What we have are the people who are either into making quick money and not have a very world-beating ambitions in their head, or that they are not as much of a risk taker in a sense. To sort of give you an example of it, if you are a software outsourcing firm, we have cornered the market all over the world in software outsourcing. Billions of dollars are as an income made by us. But we did not create internet. We didn't get into the cloud computing. We are not getting into the AI. Why is that? I think it is a combination of two things. I think the people who are making a lot of money doing low-level stuff don't want to actually risk the capital or their efforts to do something that may or may not work out. And our education system is also similarly the same way. Our professors don't take that kind of risk. And it's sort of hard to sort of explain why it is that way. Because if you look at any of these innovations like internet or social media or quantum computing, a large portion of that is actually being driven by the Indian who are settled abroad.
Yes.
So we have the talent. What we need is a drive.
And perhaps that kind of ecosystem which basically values and awards people who come up with better engineering than just people who are better entrepreneurs.
That is absolutely spot on. You do need to actually start rewarding the engineering talent. It should not be that you become an engineer and in 3 years you want to become a manager. That is not how it works in US. In the company that I started, my main engineers got as much of a salary as my marketing VP got it. So we have to start valuing engineering talent as well.
Because I think there's a disproportionate amount of media validation given to entrepreneurs as versus good engineers and product guys. I also feel that. Because just look at it. For instance, OpenAI is a classic example. We don't even know who is building OpenAI ChatGPT. All we know is this person called Sam Altman, who's actually a marketing guy.
Sam Altman is very good at raising money, very good at actually doing marketing.
Yes.
But if you actually look at the org chart and if you actually look at how the people are compensated, the main engineers are actually compensated well. If an engineer, a chief engineer of that company leaves, it makes a media noise. It makes basically media covers it saying, oh my God, the main guy has left OpenAI, will it survive? we do not have that kind of an attention. From media, particularly, they glorify the top person, entrepreneur, not realizing that top person can't do anything by himself.
Absolutely. I think media is, and I think being part of the fraternity, I can absolutely say there's so much attention to given to the person who is a fundraiser or the entrepreneur or the CEO. We don't even want to talk to the chief product officer or the engineers who are building the product.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, what is the difference between that entrepreneur and somebody who's making money building real estate?
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally buy your point. So, Hemant, when you speak to policy makers in this country, and I must say that you must have had some conversations with them on how to sort of really modify the entire curriculum or the pedagogy of engineering education, how open they were to your conversation? Was it some kind of backlash?
Actually, I would want to dispel the cynicism that a lot of people have about our higher education system. I think there is a lot more receptivity about how to change things that I have seen. You know, by now, Bhavan Foundation is a program going on in about 30 colleges around the country. And I can very confidently say that every institution there is a group of professors which are actually quite interested in experimenting with a new pedagogy. They are very open to suggestions. They are very open to coming up with their own ideas and doing it. So I think that is not a gating problem. I think there is a lot of receptivity.
Okay. So Hemant, at Bhavan Foundation, can you give me the mechanics of how exactly do you work with an engineering institute? Are you providing funding? Are you providing the methodology? Are you providing the professors who will run the Makerspace program? I mean, how closely do you work with them, and what are the ingredients of that? What does it really entail, the work?
Yeah. I think we begin our association with any university by providing them an equipment for building a makerspace. We also educate them and make sure that the makerspaces have a couple of characteristics that we like, that it is open to any students and it is available to do a non-classroom kind of an activity. Anybody should walk in and do things, and then it's open 24/7 or at least beyond the office hours. Those are the first steps we make. We also help try and modify, work with the professors to try and modify their courses to have a project component to it. And that is our next step. On top of it, we run several nationwide competitions or events where we teach students how to innovate. In fact, to give you an example of it, last summer we ran a 6-week summer work, about 60 students, and they actually produced about 30 patents. They were asked to come up with a idea that is patentable, build a prototype, and write a patent. And we had faculty members mentor them to do that. So there are a number of such kind of courses and the workshops that we run that takes advantage of these facilities.
So Hemant, when you went to the US or Stanford, you did your PhD there, how are the maker spaces run there? Because I'm assuming with your conversation now that having an excellent maker space perhaps also goes in deciding which engineering institute or university to go to. It is a deciding factor.
I think in the Stanford education that I received, those days the makerspaces were not all that prevalent. But let me give you an example that tells you how different things are, right? When I was learning a computer architecture, not only I actually learned about how the computers are built or the microprocessors are built, but I actually had to design portions of a microprocessor, which was actually built and chip came back, and until it got working, I didn't get a grade.
Wow.
That is a very different thing. Or similarly, they don't teach you how to write a compiler for some language. You have to write one. And unless it is working, you don't get an A. And so those are the kind of things that are ingrained in the education there. I will bet you that you look at any of our courses, they don't have that kind of an emphasis on making things. Even professors have built things like that themselves.
And if you were to give me two reasons that where is a disconnect, that whilst there might be an intent as outlined in the education policy to make it more experiential, where is it not meeting the execution, you think?
I think it's a question of, it takes time. The changes in the education system always takes time. So, these are professors who have learned their craft in the older days, and they are sometimes resistant to change, sometimes they are slow to change. So I think the movement is there. I am actually quite bullish about where we are headed, and it will become a lot more prevalent.
But Hemant, just given the dynamics of the country that we are into, only I would say a top percentage of engineers get to the IITs, right? Or these tier 1 or tier 2 engineering colleges. If you really have to make an impact, perhaps you have to go to like the tier 3 and tier 4 engineering colleges. Is that the intent that you are working with, or is this relegated to a more sort of top tier kind of institution?
So I think it's a good point that you're making. If you take an example of a US, they have, say, 50 really good colleges where the distinction between the very top tier and the 50th one is not very high. There are education quality you get is quite similar to each other. That's not the case for us. If you have to say extrapolate based on a population size, we should have 100 such colleges which are very close to each other in their educational quality. So yes, we need to basically expand the quality education to the second tier, or what we call a second tier colleges now, go beyond IITs. And in fact, the Bhavan Foundation is currently more focused on bringing whatever we do to the second tier colleges. We are now currently in 12 second tier colleges, and over the next few years, we hope to go to another 50 of them.
So Hemant, how much of this Bhavan Foundation is your personal capital, or do you also mobilize external capital to sort of get the engine going, because it's an extensive program, it's an extensive involvement. So I'm assuming that there must be a machinery working, a well-oiled machinery working behind it.
It started out being a personal capital, but I think it was important for me to get others involved. It's not just the capital. You need the energy and the vision of a number of people in there. So as of now, Bhavan Foundation has a number of large contributors, large donors. They are still not institutional donors. We don't go to the Gates Foundations, or we don't go to the CSR money from here. It's still friends and family kind of a funding. But in order to scale up, we'll probably change that model.
So you have to institutionalize the setup, go to more institutional donors, right? And what steps are you taking in that direction? And do you think that there is more receptivity to the idea, like come to India, build the maker spaces? When you do these soft pitches with some of these institutions, what is the kind of response you think?
I think there is a receptivity abroad as well as within India. I don't see that as a gating issue. I think what we have been careful about is that we do a pilot experiment. We say we are going to do this innovation workshops, see how it works out. How do we scale it? So that is our goal. We kind of start small, make sure that it's scalable, and then only we try to go to other places. So the need for more money comes when you are trying to scale up. And I think we are right now at that juncture where we are scaling up number of our programs. So we will need some of this institutional money.
So what is the response that you have received till now to this maker spaces integration that you have done with various institutes till now? So you have done one with IIT Bombay, I'm assuming. And what are, if you could name some top 8 to 10 colleges where you have done that?
So we are currently working with 6 different IITs. IIT Jammu, IIT Hyderabad, IIT Bombay, IIT Ropar, IIT Indore. And we are now at a stage where there is incoming interest from various IITs on doing things with them. We are just limited there by our bandwidth. This 6 institutions plus some others like IIT Delhi and others very recently have come together, and they are forming a association of makers, academic maker spaces.
Oh.
And that will do a nationwide conference, which is similar to what an international conference of makerspace works. And so we are seeding that effort. We are giving them funding, we are giving them encouragement to do such things. So I think our focus is on creating an ecosystem, and we are very happy to partner with other foundations or even people who have not taken funding from us, like IIT Delhi is a good example. It's been funded by their own alumni. We simply help them come up with the processes.
So basically the idea for this conference, the nationwide symposium, is essentially to bring out a manifesto, if you will, the best practices for makers.
Exactly.
Right?
They exchange ideas on what works, what doesn't work. Each place has slightly different ideas of how to do things. And so the exchange of ideas is very good. And that's what
it's extremely important. And just talking on the topic of exchange of ideas, you think how critical is the community aspect on building out a makerspace? Because you said about engagement. So how do you make sure your program has to be consistent, the programming, right? To sort of also keep the student engaged in the makerspace program.
To be honest, I think we have been trying for the past year to build a community of makers at the student level.
Okay.
I wouldn't claim that we have figured out how to do it. I mean, we do have the platform where there are mentors from industry as well as the students communicate with each other. But we are not entirely sure that what we have done so far is very scalable. We work with, say, hundreds. We would like to have it work with 10,000 or 100,000 makers in the country, and we haven't gotten a platform built like that.
Maybe I think a good idea could also be to have this kind of programming where every day something unique is happening. Maybe one workshop could be on, say, communication. One workshop could be on soft skills. One workshop could also be on dealing with failure. One workshop could be on compensation or dealing with outer world, mental health. So your programming has to be consistent because it requires effort to put a community together.
Absolutely. But, just to tell you how much of an enthusiasm we have managed to create. This year we had a nationwide competition of working and coming up with a working solution or a prototypes for 3 different domains: sustainability, water and sanitation, and smart mobility. We had 600 teams actually apply for those programs, coming out of 215 colleges across the nation. And we ultimately ended up selecting about 20 of them. It's called a Vishwakarma Awards. We ended up selecting 20 of them and gave them a prize on 6 of them. So there is an enormous desire on parts of the students to do this kind of a thing. How do we make a community out of them around what concept, we build a community, we are still struggling to figure out.
I'm sure you'll get there, and I think a lot of ideas which can be sort of worked upon to build that community. Hemant, I also want to understand from you that this entire intent is there to make it a product nation. If you were to give me 2 or 3 challenges, if you will, which you think you are encountering now, or which you think you will encounter in your journey, which could those be?
I don't know what you mean by challenges, but I think it would be sort of a good to get away from thinking that I'm going to take a product from elsewhere and do indigenization or make it cheaper and affordable. That is not the way to go. I would like us to sort of take a product, reverse engineer it, and see how I can make it better. On performance, an order of magnitude difference in performance, or an order of magnitude cheaper. And that requires innovations. It's not just a tinkering on the edges. So I think the challenge is to, let's see, an example of it is that we haven't gotten a good battery technology, right? Our EV industry depends on battery. We have borrowed most of the technology from abroad. We haven't come up with something that would be unique and better than everybody else.
Hemant, I really wonder that what is your discussion with some of the VCs who invest into deep tech startups in India? Because when we go and interview them and talk to them, the headlines which you see in mainstream media or otherwise, India is becoming a deep tech nation, so much is coming out of this country, there are drones coming out of this country, aerospace. But if one were to really talk to someone like you, who is so genuinely invested and passionate about investing in engineering, you give a counter view. Perhaps still a lot more is yet to be done.
I think our VC industry is maturing, but at where it is currently, it is dominated by people who have a financial interest. They don't really have an interest in the engineering aspect or the science aspect of it. So when they talk of a deep tech, I'm a little skeptical about their knowledge of the deep tech or what they consider a deep tech. But it is changing, it is improving. You will see a lot many more people from venture partners who have actually worked abroad and built a company there, and they have a better knowledge of what it is. So there are a handful of VC companies that do a deep tech investments.
Okay.
Many more are needed.
Absolutely. How open you are to the idea of also partnering with some of these private institutions in the country, which might not necessarily be the IITs or the government-sponsored institutions, but be more private in nature. Do you think you're open to the idea of collaborating with them for maker spaces?
Collaboration with
private universities, like say a Parul University or a Galgotia University or things like that.
Actually, we have gone long before we have gone away from actually working with just the state and the central universities. For instance, we are a makerspace in Ahmedabad University, which is completely private. We have a makerspace in Nirma, which is completely private. So we are actually don't make a distinction between public or a private. What we do want is that there needs to be a faculty or a group of faculty interested in this area, the champions inside, and a higher management, a university management supportive of that effort. If those two are there, then we work with them.
Okay. Hemant, if there are 1 or 2 things which you think you would have done better in this journey of Maker Bhavan Foundation till now, what would that be?
I think it would be better if I had managed to excite a lot many more people inside India to understand that this is a very critical part of India becoming an advanced nation. And we are improving on that count, but I wish that I had the marketing flair to get those kind of. I wish I had a Sam Altman kind of an alter ego who can do all that work. But I'm not.
No, but that is so counterintuitive. That is so counter to your personality. You are somebody who is so invested into engineering, you would not like that marketing persona of yours. But perhaps a talent complementing you would be nice, you're saying.
We will find more people. But keep in mind, I mean, I did build a company and I raised a lot of money for it. So I can market myself. I just haven't done a good job here.
No, I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
And I also want to understand from you, Hemant, one critical aspect, and I think we should spend like the next 5 minutes on that, that what would be the ideal makerspace ecosystem for India? You gave me an example of Stanford, but Shrija, how things are different in India versus there. What do you think would be the most desired makerspace ecosystem that you are imagining or envisioning coming out of this country?
So, ideal makerspace has three different kind of functions that I would like them to fulfill well. One is that it needs to have a component which is mostly student managed. Students should feel an ownership of the space of the management and expanding, planning, budgeting, all those kind of things, which is very foreign to the various institutions. They don't want to give students that much control of their own life. So that is one aspect of it. The other aspect of a makerspace is that it should also be a hub where you actually have a projects which are part of a curriculum can be built. So there is a sort of classroom education kind of an aspect of it. And the third is, I think, a lot of our research, which is a lot more theoretical, if they can also actually do a prototype and demonstrate their ideas, that also can be done in makerspace. And increasingly, that makes it more real. And I see that happening more as well. But so the ideal makerspace combines all these three elements, and faculty members who are interested in doing that.
Suppose if I go to the makerspace of IIT Bombay and I have an idea, so what are the kind of tools and resources which the makerspace is providing me to realize that project of mine?
So, first of all, if you are just completely new to the concept of building things, then the makerspace would actually have a short-term courses to actually teach you how to use various tools. And the tools are 3D printers and laser cutters and all different kinds of 3D modeling kind of stuff. Once you get confident that you can use those machines, it is up to you. You come up with an idea, you go there, work on your own, you work with the team, you build your project. You don't have to show it to anybody. You don't have to need anybody's permission that this is going to be my project. You have your own material, you can borrow some material that they have. So the idea is, it's your space. It's like having a well-equipped garage. You work on your own.
So I ideate, I iterate, and I test it. And what happens if I test and I fail? So what happens then?
That's an education.
Okay. So is there somebody who's telling me, okay, nothing happens, you failed?
Nothing is a failure permanently, right? I mean, if you look at a failure and say you expected the system to work in a particular way, it didn't work, so then you have to debug it. You have to find out why it didn't work. You go to a mentor, somebody senior, a professor, and say, here is what happened. What did I do wrong? That's a learning experience.
And if I iterated and I tested and it showed some semblance or seeds of success, so what happens? So what is the stage then? How do I get to the prototype stage?
This is actually building a prototype.
Okay.
Right? I mean, you're not just halfway through checking it. I mean, if you're building a drone, it better fly. Okay, if it doesn't fly, it's a failure.
It's a failure.
Right? If you're building an autonomous vehicle, underwater autonomous vehicle, it better not sink. It better go somewhere. Right? If you don't, that's a failure. But once it fails, then you have to figure out why. Right? And there's always a continual improvement you can do. And you can carry it out as long as you have an enthusiasm.
Okay.
Nobody is going to check on it. Nobody is grading you on that.
Okay, so I build that drone and I have the ambition of taking that drone to the market for, say, commercialization process. Because you said that the maker space can be treated as the formative step to the incubation cell. Now I have this desire that I have created this great product. How do I market it and perhaps make a company out of it? So build a maker space, help me there.
So you have to realize that all this is basically providing a proof of concept kind of prototype. From that point, you have to take a next step, which is a manufacturable prototype.
Yes,
That
yes.
manufacturable prototype, you have to worry about the cost of it. You have to worry about how much labor is needed in doing it. The full features that it needs has to be something that a market is ready to accept or pay for it. That is the next step. That is what I call an education in how to build a company. What is the minimum viable product? Those are the kind of things. And many of these institutions have, for instance, in IIT Bombay, we are integrated into some school of entrepreneurship, Desai City School of Entrepreneurship. And so they can actually graduate from our makerspace to actually take courses there, take a mentorship from there, and build a manufacturable prototype.
That's interesting. I'm also wanting to understand, so that the maker space, will it also provide me some kind of financial support to experiment with these kind of drones and everything that requires in making it?
We have the materials available for you to make the prototype. If you need something specific, then you have to buy it on your own. But we generally have something that would help you build a prototype. For instance, there will be a Arduino board that you can use. So, I mean, those are proof of concept kind of things. The material will be available.
That is so interesting.
To make it a manufacturable prototype, you have to invest your own money. And you know, by the time you think in terms of, I'm going to do a startup, you're on your own. Nobody is going to handhold you, right? I mean, if you expect that some rich uncle is going to help you, then be it.
Absolutely. Hemant, I have to ask you this. What a lovely conversation this really has been, unraveling it bit by bit. If you were to sort of talk to our Honorable Prime Minister, right, and this ambition of India becoming a 5 trillion economy, and just to sort of tell him that how critical this entire makerspace concept or reinvigorating the engineering education in this country is, what would the conversation look like?
Actually, our government has taken a very important step of actually saying that these are important things to focus on, right? I mean, government, the most important thing is it focusing various educational institutions, saying experiential education is important, making things is important, building products, building companies is important. All those are actually a good things that a government has done. I'm not sure that government needs to do anything much more than that.
It has laid out the policy.
Yeah.
It has sort of maybe enabled the tools for creating the ecosystem, and it is for us to now grab the opportunity and build upon that. Hemant, I can't let you go with a bit of a rapid fire. We have to play this quick rapid fire with you. The fondest memory from your IIT Bombay days?
IIT Bombay days, fondest memory is going to sound very strange. I spent all my time in volleyball field.
Okay. Name one overhyped technology according to you right now.
Overhyped?
Technology.
Right now, I would say crypto.
Crypto. Okay. You mentioned about AI. This entire sort of kerfuffle that parents and educators have, that how much of AI should a student be using? Like, it's come to an extent that people have stopped writing also in some schools now.
I think AI is going to be very important in all fields of our life. And so, as far as the AI is concerned, my recommendation, which nobody would take, is to basically abolish the computer science major at the undergraduate level and teach everybody programming and the AI to all engineering students.
Okay, that's a good thought because
Nobody's going to do that.
no, but we had actually Satya Nadella come to India, and he actually made the statement that we want to make India an AI nation and have courses democratize AI. So how can it actually become a visible reality? You think this is the best way to do it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think an AI is at the heart of it. What most people don't realize, it's a statistical programming. India is good in mathematics. Indian students are good in mathematics. We should be very great in AI.
But why are we so afraid of AI? Why this fear of this new technology? I've never seen this with other waves. But with AI, there's this potent fear of losing your job or losing your creativity or losing everything to a machine. Why do we have that fear?
Well, I think AI is a technology. It can be used to eliminate jobs. It can be used to make take away the drudgery of any work, and so it could be a productivity enhancement for the people, and so you have to use it wisely. And I think as a human race, we have figured out how to use new technology wisely over the time period. There is always going to be disruption. There is no doubt that there will be major disruption in the job market. What is the example of it? I think now the AI is getting good enough to do a better programming than an average programmer. What is that going to do to our software industry? It's going to be a major change unless they change themselves and reinvent themselves. And that's the issue.
So how does one change? It's often used
Never fear the advance in technology or the science. Take advantage of it. That's my prescription.
Take advantage of it. Okay. My last question to you: if you were to talk to me about any sort of profound experience that you had with any maker or any student which left a lasting impression on your mind, what would that be?
Sorry, I didn't follow that.
Any experience that you had with a maker or a student which left a lasting impression on your mind, what would that be?
So in the last Invention Factory program we did, I was really surprised by the first two winners of the who came up with some really interesting ideas were women engineers. And they didn't come from an IIT, they came from some regional engineering colleges. It reaffirmed my idea or notion that good students come from anywhere. It has nothing to do with your sex or the college you come from. I was very pleased with the enthusiasm they had and the things they came up with. So.
Thanks for that, Hemant. It was incredible having you on this conversation. And this was the first episode of the Maker FM, which is a series of extremely insightful conversations with innovators, thinkers, and people who've actually done substantial like Hemant. So stay tuned till the time I see you next. Goodbye and good luck. Thank you so much.